Godbreakers was born about 4 years ago, when a group of friends and former co-workers decided to create their own studio called To the Sky. The central idea was to build a studio focused primarily on gameplay, something that would really leave a mark on players. The initial concept of the game was a bit more ambitious, including traveling through constantly changing fractal planets, with battles against bosses from whom the player could rip off limbs to attach to themselves. However, they soon realized that this was too great a technical challenge for the initial team, which started with just 6 developers. For this reason, the project was adjusted to the current mechanic of absorbing powers from enemies, which already brings an incredible dynamism to the gameplay. One of the most important focuses from the beginning was to get the movement and attack system right. Inspired by fast-paced third-person hack-and-slash games, with a lot of freedom for the player to execute combos and move with fluidity. One detail that catches my attention is the innovation of allowing animation cancellation with the dash, which makes the action very fast and gives a feeling of almost perfect control, something that is a pillar for the intense and frenetic experience that the game proposes. Of course, this required a lot of experimentation, but the result seems to be exactly what they wanted: dense and precise gameplay that values the skilled player. Development also gave great importance to building memorable bosses, which were not just obstacles, but moments of challenge where precision and strategy are crucial. The first boss created, Ur, was designed to be an accessible start and teach players how to use the main skill absorption system to move and attack. This shows care in balancing the game for new players, but already promises higher levels of challenge with other bosses that will be true tests for the co-op team's skill and coordination. Another sensitive aspect of the development is the ambition to offer a competitive and cooperative experience for up to 4 players, with chaotic battles that require synchronization and coordination. This focus on mechanically deep cooperation is very bold and necessary to stand out in the roguelite action game market, where cooperation can so often seem like just a superficial bonus. On the aesthetic and narrative side, the team designed 6 surreal and distinct biomes, each with its own identity in terms of enemies, dangers, and challenges. This reinforces the idea that Godbreakers is not just a visually impactful game, but one that has layers of exploration and variation that increase replayability. This diversity of environments and challenges creates a constant sense of novelty for the player, which is essential for a roguelite that wants to keep the player interested for many hours. I feel that the development of Godbreakers is an admirable balance between creative ambition and technical pragmatism. The developers showed courage by attempting a complex proposal and at the same time recognized limitations and readjusted the game to suit the team and the project's viability. For me, this is the essence of quality independent game development today: daring, experimenting, and pushing limits, but always focusing on delivering a consistent and fun experience for the player. This creates high expectations for the launch, as it highlights the team's care and commitment. Godbreakers presents intense and fluid gameplay, centered on cooperative hack-and-slash for up to 4 players, with a strong focus on speed, reaction, and strategy. The essence of the game lies in the ability to steal powers from enemies to use against them, which creates a very interesting dynamism. Combat is not just about hitting enemies, but understanding which enemy's ability can turn the game in your favor. And this seemed like a very welcome idea to bring depth to the gameplay. It is a system that demands constant attention and rewards experimentation with different builds and playstyles, something I find quite stimulating for those who like to challenge themselves creatively. The combat is very fast and allows movements and attacks to be cancelled at any moment, always through a dash mechanic that, in my opinion, is crucial to maintaining the frantic pace. This fluidity in the game reminds me of those titles where you have to be 100% focused, because at any second a poorly executed dodge can cost you dearly. This creates a good tension, where you are always on edge with sweaty palms, as the developers said, a feeling that every step can be fatal if not very well calculated. I really like this action style where technique and timing are just as important as brute force. Another layer that caught my attention was the variety of character archetypes, each with unique weapons, attributes, and styles. This gives the game excellent replayability, as in addition to facing different battles, you can adapt your way of playing with each attempt, testing new combinations between weapons and abilities. I particularly like it when games allow this freedom to shape your character, as it makes me feel that the game adapts to me and not the other way around. The cooperative mode, in turn, expands this even further, making communication and synergy between players essential for success. The bosses are highlighted as multi-phase and intense battles, each with complex and specific patterns that require not only reflexes but also strategy and coordination, especially in multiplayer. This type of challenge gives a freshness and weight to each fight, warding off the risk of the game becoming repetitive. In my experience, games that feature these boss confrontations that test different abilities tend to make matches more memorable and win over the player in the long run. It is a point that excites me, as it seems the game does not delegate the task of entertainment to easy hits or easy-to-memorize patterns. The setting of the 6 biomes with their unique enemies and dangers also contributes a lot to the gameplay experience. The arenas are described as vibrant and bizarre, which helps break the monotony and also forces the player to constantly adapt. I really like this visual and environmental challenge variety, as it strengthens the feeling of adventure and exploration, elements I consider essential in a roguelite action game. This makes it clear that it is not just a matter of fighting, but also surviving and understanding the terrain, creating another layer of strategy in the gameplay. The dynamic of the items called essences, which are acquired during incursions and provide buffs that combine with fragments to improve builds, adds an interesting complexity to the progression system. For me, this greatly enriches the gameplay because each match allows you to experiment with different combinations that can completely change how you face the challenges. This type of personalization is something that makes me want to come back and play and explore all the possibilities, especially in a title where experimentation in combat is so valued. Godbreakers gameplay seems like an invitation to constant learning and adaptation, combining fast combat, skill stealing, cooperation, varied strategies, and continuous character growth. It is a game that not only tests reflexes and coordination, but also the player's creativity when setting up their tactics. Personally, I think this mix of frantic action and strategic depth has everything to please fans of roguelikes and hack and slash, especially those who enjoy the adrenaline of games that keep you constantly attentive and reward experimentation. Godbreakers takes place in a dystopian, dark future where humanity has been practically extinguished, wiped out by an artificial intelligence known as Monad, initially created to improve the world. This AI, in a quest for perfection, ended up taking absolute control, destroying practically everything, including the surrounding planets, with the sun being the next target. Players take on the role of the so-called vessels of humanity, beings resurrected by celestial entities to be the last hope against this relentless threat. This backdrop is an interesting mix of sci-fi and fantasy, which gives an unexpected depth to a game focused on frantic action and cooperation. The story of Godbreakers is centered on the desperate, almost religious struggle of these vessels against Monad, an artificial intelligence that spares no effort to consume and control everything around it. Despite the apocalyptic scenario, the narrative brings a fascinating contrast between the advanced technology represented by the AI and the almost mythology of the characters, who are seen as divine weapons reignited to resist. This duality creates an intense atmosphere and places the player on a mission that is more than just survival. It is an attempt to keep alive a spark of humanity that still remains. What I found most interesting about this story is how it avoids the cliché of evil robots to invest in a narrative that explores the relationship between creation and destruction. In addition to the almost messianic role of the characters, the way humanity was wiped out, but something still remains alive within these vessels, brings a melancholic and urgent feeling that greatly matches the challenges of the gameplay, where each fight represents an attempt to reverse an apparently inevitable fate. This emotional layer, even if subtle, ends up enriching the experience and makes the player care more about the mission. The setting of the different biomes throughout the game also helps to tell this story indirectly. There are 6 vibrant and surreal biomes, each with enemies and obstacles that illustrate the impact of the destruction caused by Monad on different ecosystems. This variation reinforces the feeling of a collapsing universe, but at the same time one that is vibrant in its peculiarities. Each biome is not just a setting for combat, but a visual chapter of the game's narrative, where nature and technology meet in constant conflict. Another aspect of the story that caught my attention, and that I consider a creative touch, is the concept of enemy powers being absorbable. This not only integrates perfectly with the gameplay, but also functions as a metaphor for the struggle for human survival, using the oppressor's own strengths against them. This mechanic reinforces the idea of transformation and adaptation present in the narrative, where what seemed to be an absolute end becomes the basis for resisting and fighting, bringing a symbolic layer to the plot. The plot also imparts an almost apocalyptic sense of urgency, not only due to the destruction of the world, but also due to the constant threat of Monad's next step, the consumption of the sun. This cosmic thread expands the scope of the story to something bigger and grander, giving the narrative an almost epic sense of scale. Personally, this reminded me a bit of classic science fiction stories that mix the fate of humanity and the universe. Something I believe is rare in action games that usually focus only on the adrenaline of combat and technical challenges. The story of Godbreakers is, for me, one of the points that elevate the game beyond a simple cooperative hack and slash. It creates a very rich backstage for the intense battles and strategic gameplay, offering a real motivation for the player to continue and explore the game's universe. It is a narrative that, despite not being told in a traditional way with long dialogues or extensive cutscenes, is embedded in the game's design, in the enemies, in the powers, and in the environments. This makes the experience much more immersive and personal, in addition to generating that feeling that every combat has weight within a larger conflict. What caught my attention most about the game's graphics is this combination of intense colors and a biome design that is unconventional, creating a surreal atmosphere. It is a type of art that, for me, goes beyond mere technical realism and focuses more on a strong artistic style, almost like a digital painting in motion, which gives the game a very striking character of its own. This stylistic choice helps maintain visual interest during game sessions because everything has a well-defined visual identity and is far from the gray or somber standard that many hack-and-slash games adopt today. The modeling of characters and enemies presents an interesting balance between detail and fluidity. While it does not reach hyperrealism, the attention to detail in the design of armor, weapons, and visual effects of abilities seems quite careful to me, which creates a nice immersion in the game's frantic action. Personally, I think this technical decision greatly favors the gameplay, as a visual that is too loaded or has too many polygons could hinder the quick reading of battles, which is essential in such a fast-paced title. The resulting effect is visual clarity that makes it easier to understand what is happening while maintaining graphical beauty. In terms of lighting and particle effects, Godbreakers also delivers a very interesting experience. In particular, the dynamic light effects on the scenario elements and the glow on special attacks give a very satisfying visual impact without falling into noisy exaggeration. For me, these effects play a fundamental role in increasing the feeling of power when using abilities, in addition to bringing the game world to life without overloading performance. This shows that the studio prioritizes a good harmony between graphic quality and fluidity, something I rarely see executed so well in games focused on intense cooperative action. Speaking now of the general style, Godbreakers has a certain artistic cyberpunk quality combined with fantastic elements that reminds me a little of the Hyperlight Drifter vibe, but with more polished textures and more saturated colors. This look creates a unique visual impact, familiar to those who like modern pixel art aesthetics, but with a more robust and three-dimensional feel. What I like most is how the biome design and the use of colors work to guide the player's eye and highlight areas of interest, which is smart for the game's pace and prevents the visual from becoming repetitive or tiring. Looking closer at the graphic animations, they seem very well worked for a fast-paced action game. The combos, dashes, and special attacks flow with precision, without seeming truncated or mechanical. This graphical smoothness is essential to create that addictive feeling that every hit has weight and immediate response. One of my favorite points in fighting and hack-and-slash games. This shows that the development team invested heavily in ensuring that the graphics not only look good, but also strongly support the player's feeling of dominance. I believe that Godbreakers succeeds by not just trying to compete with realism, but rather by delivering a visual experience that perfectly matches its gameplay. The strong graphic identity, the clear visual reading amidst the chaos of battles, and the stable performance make it a game that delights the eye and keeps the player focused and entertained. For me, it is precisely this balance between style, functionality, and technique that makes Godbreakers' graphics one of its greatest assets, especially for those who value not only the visuals, but the harmony between art and gameplay. Godbreakers stands out for a performance that is surprising for a frantic action roguelike, especially for delivering consistency on both PC and Steam Deck. The game maintains a firm 60 FPS most of the time, which translates into extremely fluid combat and visuals that sustain the accelerated pace of the gameplay. This stability won me over right from the start, as there is nothing more frustrating in a roguelike than frame drops during intense moments, when a fraction of a second can separate success from defeat. In Godbreakers, this concern has been practically eliminated thanks to the impeccable optimization, making the game one of the most deck-ready among recent releases. Another detail that stands out is how the game behaves on medium to high graphic settings. Even opting for maximum global illumination and effects, the performance remains solid. and this is rare in indie titles with so much visual dynamism. On the Steam Deck, I was able to run with graphics better than expected without sacrificing fluidity, with small drops to 55 FPS only in the most insane battle moments. For me, this performance elasticity is fundamental because it allows me to enjoy the complete visual experience without giving up responsiveness, especially important for those who play in portable mode. Input precision is part of the Godbreakers experience, especially with the dash mechanic that allows canceling attacks and abilities at any moment. This system requires the game to respond quickly to commands without noticeable delay, and I am happy to say that this was delivered with praise. With the game running smoothly, it is easy to execute combos and dodges with confidence, without the fear of losing frames or command lag in the worst moments. Often, it is basic technical performance that defines the feeling of control. And here it feels like everything was designed so that the player never loses the rhythm. However, personally, the game could be even more comfortable with a lock-on system for attacks. It is not directly a performance issue, but it affects fluidity in practice as manually aiming amidst the chaos requires extra acuity from the player. The performance responds well, but I missed this polish that would make the experience even smoother, particularly in co-op or phases with many enemies on the screen. Another pleasant surprise was testing the game in frame generation mode, reaching up to 90 FPS on compatible setups. This adds an absurd layer of smoothness, giving that premium finish to the animations and visual effects during combat. Although 60 FPS is already excellent, this extra feature makes a difference for those who are obsessed with visual performance. And for me, the game seems to shine even more, even if battery life is sacrificed on portable devices. Speaking of portability, the power consumption optimization on the Steam Deck Gold was intelligent. In sessions of approximately 2.5 hours at 60 FPS, I felt that the cost-benefit between graphics and battery life is very well balanced for an indie that delivers detailed scenarios and uninterrupted action. Of course, for those who prefer to play at 90 FPS, the battery life drops, but it is not a drastic drop. The developers knew how to calibrate this trade-off between performance and autonomy well. In general, Godbreakers left a strong impression thanks to its robust performance and the developers' obvious concern to ensure fluidity above all else. For me, it serves as an example of how a roguelike can deliver responsive combat, striking visuals, and consistent performance, all at the same time. Godbreakers is a game that arrived with a very clear proposal of intense and cooperative action, which caught my attention even before the launch. If you enjoy frantic games with a lot of movement, quick combos, and that adrenaline rush of stealing enemy powers, it delivers that very well. Now, my opinion is that if you like to experience the game to the fullest with friends, the launch may be worthwhile because the co-op is what really makes the game shine and offers that collective fun that is missing in many titles of the style. On the other hand, if you are more the type who plays alone, I suggest some caution. My impressions indicate that the game may be less challenging and even a little repetitive if played solo, mainly because the balancing favors group play. I like solo games, but with Godbreakers, I think I will wait a bit to see how the game evolves if it receives updates, adjustments, and if the community confirms that the individual experience is worthwhile. As for the price, that also weighs on this decision. It is not yet entirely clear how much it will cost, but it does not seem to be a AAA title with very high prices, which is good. Even so, if it is not in a very aggressive price range, I would recommend waiting for a sale or waiting a little to see how the game holds up after launch, especially because the learning curve is gentle, and the challenge may not be as intense as in other roguelikes or hack-and-slash games of the genre. Godbreakers is indicated for those who enjoy the agile action style, quick combinations, and that type of game where coordination within the group is fundamental. If you like games like Risk of Rain 2 or Devil May Cry in co-op mode, you will feel at home. The atmosphere of the art and soundtrack has a lighter arcade style, which gives a different vibe for those expecting something darker or more serious. Godbreakers is indicated for those who enjoy the agile action style, quick combinations, and that type of game where coordination within the group is fundamental. If you like games like Risk of Rain 2 or Devil May Cry in co-op mode, you will feel at home. The atmosphere of the art and soundtrack has a lighter arcade style, which gives a different vibe for those expecting something darker or more serious. Overall, I would be tempted to buy at launch if I had a fixed group to play with and if the price is not prohibitive. Now, if it is a solo purchase and you are looking for something with more impact and challenge, it is worth waiting until after launch to see what the collective feedback says. When a fast and fun action game comes out, I always feel like grabbing it right away. But sometimes waiting brings a more satisfying experience in the end. Godbreakers is for those who want immediate and intense fun in a group, with interesting mechanics of power stealing and skill combos. If your vibe is an elaborate solo game, I think it is better to wait a bit. Well, that was my analysis. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next video.
Don't push back.